Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm going to say this is your front row seat to the biggest stories in cyber crime, data breaches, ransomware attacks, and things that are impacting your business and all businesses across the globe. I'm your host, Brian Horning. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the sharp and savvy Randy Bryan and Reginald Andre. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing well. Good morning.
Good.
Doing great here, man. I'm buckled in. Let's dive in.
You got your coffee? Got your coffee? You're good?
Yeah, I got my coffee.
All right. So this week we got a jam-packed show. We got to get through it quick, guys. We got a breach at Adidas that's leaking customer data, a lawsuit following a ransomware attack on a firm holding sensitive data on abuse survivors, and the hits just keep on coming. We're going to break down why ransomware is still quietly wreaking havoc, even as AI distracts IT teams, and examine the stunning stat that companies take on average 4 months to even report a ransomware attack. So grab your coffee, log in from your bunker. Let's get into what's happening in this week's cybersecurity news. The bunker one was for you, Andre, or Randy. So let's get into it. Adidas. What's happening with Adidas, guys? I don't even know, to be honest with you. They had a breach that exposed some customer information. Is that what we're dealing with here?
Yeah, but not necessarily Adidas, but third-party customers.
Man, those dang third parties. They keep causing problems for these big companies. What's happening?
Yeah, so it's a customer service provider. So perhaps Adidas outsources when you call for maybe, hey, my shoes were too small and I need to return it, or whatever the case is. But the data stolen was names, emails, phone numbers, etc., that are now out there in the out for sale.
So do we know what kind of customer data was exposed or any of that information?
Right now we're saying names, emails, and phone numbers.
So what could attackers do with that information?
Yeah, so names, emails, phone numbers, use that with the help of dark AI to come up with targeted phishing campaigns, targeted schmishing, which is SMS campaigns, and the likes. Use it to collate it with other data that's available out there on the dark web.
Yep. So now what the bad guys can do is, now that they know you purchase, your $59 shoes, they can send you a fake survey. They can tell you, hey, we're going to be giving you a free sneakers. We just need you to fill out this information. Anything that's enticing that would make you want to click on that email and just continue because you truly think it's Adidas, sending you information.
So the article points out that this impacts Koreans, right? And I guess you guys are you buying that? Do you think that they have their data separated based on countries and things like that? It's just interesting to me. I don't know if this was was this a website that they operate that was impacted? Was it just a manufacturing center where if you happen to buy something that was manufactured in Korea that Adidas makes, maybe your information was in there? It's just an odd article to put out, and that's what I saw. I'm like, okay, this is odd. Adidas Korea has announced this, but it's a multinational company. Like, how segregated is their data?
Right.
I mean, if it is, kudos to them because it's smart, but I'm just not buying it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Breach affected customers who made inquiries to their customer service center in 2024 or earlier, according to the company. Compromised data includes customer names. In some cases, we have confirmed unauthorized access. Adidas said, so it's just interesting to me that Korean authorities.
I like the wordplay there. They said 2024 or earlier.
Right.
That means it could have been 1999 to 2024, you know? So they just said, yeah, anything before 2024.
It's interesting. I don't know. We'll learn more, I think. I just can't wrap my head around how this is only impacting Korean companies. I don't believe that they segregate data like that, like separately.
Maybe in Korea, they use a Korean customer service company to answer their support calls or something, maybe?
Possibly third party, right? Could be what you're dealing with there. Very interesting to see, and we'll see, right? Because as you pointed out, your phishing emails, spam emails, things like that are going to come your way as a result of these things to try to trick you to give up information, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be, to try to get your Adidas username and password to potentially maybe hopefully have like you have your credit card stored and people could like buy things and have it shipped elsewhere, all the way through to just tricking you into thinking it's Adidas, we need you to log in, and then they put a Microsoft or Google login in front of you, and you're thinking now you got to log in your email or your Gmail or something like that. You're just you just have your guard down, so you're not really thinking, hey, should a link I clicked on from Adidas really take me to a page for a Google login, right? If you're in your email and you clicked on an email, you may think, oh, well, Google's just having me log in again and check, just
right
for security purposes, and you just blindly put it in, and you don't realize that page is actually controlled by a cyber criminal, and they just stole your credentials, right? And if they're kind of good and keeping up with the times, they'll have a two-factor page right behind that where they're going to steal your 6-digit code, so they can get in there and do some damage. So these are all things that they just use, and it sounds silly, it sounds stupid, it sounds like, oh, well, why would they do that? People fall for this stuff. That's why they do it. Mm-hmm. Like, they know if they can get information out there, and then these scammers that come along and that they're very good at these social engineering tactics, they buy this information and then they start their scams, right? So that's how it works, and that's what you need to be aware of. So, all right, guys, let's move right along and talk about this Horizon Behavioral Health, who fell victim to a ransomware attack, and not only disrupted care services, but potentially exposed deeply sensitive health information. This isn't just business. It is people's lives and their medical history that's at risk here. So what's happening here, and based on what you're seeing in this article, guys, what should this organization, or what can all behavioral health organizations do to strengthen their cyber defenses?
Well, I still don't see why they have to link the name, the driver license information, social security number to the actual patient. It should be like a customer number that even if the bad guys get the data, okay, fine, they know all about the mental health issues this person is having, but then it's a customer number that links like that doesn't link back to an actual physical person. Like, that would have kind of solved this problem, that even if they got the information, they only got a bit of it.
Maybe you're saying like maybe what is it called? Obfuscated a little bit. Put the sensitive stuff in one place and then have a record or something to keep it separate from the actual name and all that.
Yeah, your customer number 1234, and this is all the information we have about you. So even if someone gets it, they know 1234, but they don't know who it really is.
Right.
It's just not how it works.
I know. All right.
And we don't really know a whole lot about how they got in, Brian, or how like what is Horizon.
No, we don't have much information around that at all
to stop it. But we do know that the bad guys got social security numbers, addresses, zip codes, driver's license numbers, date of birth, diagnosis, conditions, medications, other treatment information, health information, claims information. They got the whole everything.
Right.
And this kind of information, I say it all the time, but if you go to the ER, you don't just get an ER bill, you get all kinds of bills. We don't know how Horizon does their billing, if it's all unified, if you get a different bill from a doctor that you see, or a psychologist that you see, or whatever. But all this is just really easily used for targeted phishing attacks. Hey, we had a problem with your payment. Please enter your new credit card, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and this is definitely going to trigger some type of emotional distress. Just imagine you are that patient. You've told all of your, I don't want to call it issues, but for lack of better words, issues to the doctor. And now for them you get a letter in the mail saying, hey, everything you've told us and everything we know about you, now the world knows about you.
Yeah. So just a couple of things to point out with, Horizon. There's actually a bunch of in the news. We're covering this one. There's also, as this article points out right here, there's Baymark Health Services, Carleton County Public Health and Human Services, City of Bristol in Tennessee, and the Schweitz Psychological Services. These are all organizations that have recently disclosed data breaches.
Yep.
In this particular instance with Horizon, why we focused in on that one is because it was an actual ransomware attack versus somebody just getting in and stealing information. They determined that the ransomware group had access to its network between March 13th and March 16th, yet they didn't mention anything until when? Like this week, right? So it took them almost April 21st is when they reported it for the first time. So it took them almost over a month to report it to HHS. So those things right there. Number one, ransomware attackers had access to your network for 3 days and nobody knew about it, right? Yep. So when you, at the bottom here, when you say things like this, Horizon Behavioral Health said it takes data security very seriously and continually reviews and augments its security measures in response to the changing threat landscape and will continue to do so. Well, I mean, I guess so, but you got hit with ransomware, so you lose. Right. You lose when that's your opinion about yourself. Right. It's like, quite frankly, it's a fat person saying they're in shape. That is what I see when I read something like this, because you're saying it's all lip speak. You're not really doing what's required. If you have somebody floating around, farting around on your network for 3 days and you don't know about it, you're not taking data security very seriously, because quite frankly, there's technology out there that will tell you if somebody is on your network like this. Right. And you can shut it down and you can close it off and before it becomes ransomware. And that's the problem. And then the other side of this is it took you 6 weeks to disclose it to HHS. That's a really long time, which means you didn't have a response plan. You didn't have any clue how to deal with this situation, and you needed outside experts to come in, and that's why it took you 6 weeks instead of, maybe a day or two to kind of figure this out and report it if it was an actual breach. But again, like, I don't even think it should have gotten as far as a breach. Do you guys?
No,
The fact that it got to ransomware and 3 days on the network is just, it's in this day and age, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, you're right, and it shouldn't have developed into that. And then to add, I don't know, insult to injury, if you will, they took over a month to report it.
Right.
So we're seeing a lawsuit right now with Coinbase. I know we're not talking about that today,
Right.
But one of the things the lawyers are saying is that Coinbase was slow to let people know that it was going on. They were slow to announce the breach, to notify. So I don't know if this is going to happen here or not, but we'll see.
The moral of the story with this stuff in today's day and age, folks, is all the repercussions that happen in courtrooms by people taking action against you are all part of what we talk about when we say reduce the blast radius. Like, that blast radius gets really big when you start getting hit with lawsuits from people and organizations left and right. And this is part of what you're going to see. The lawsuits will roll in, as a result of this news. That's why this stuff gets published out there, because then, people start picking their heads up out of the sand and then contacting attorneys who are going to represent them in class action lawsuits for these things that these companies are failing to do. Right. So it goes far beyond paying for protection. It goes far beyond what you pay for to deal with a ransomware attack, meaning paying the ransom and then getting yourself back up and running. That is like your entry fee. After that is when the real costs start to come in, right? Like, you didn't pay for cybersecurity. You're dealing with this event. Now this is going to be the fine you pay. Well, and then you find out after you pay the fine that you're just going to have to pay more through the nose, because now these lawyers are coming with clients who want to sue the pants off you. And that's the world we're living in now. So be ready, as we're going to see. And here's another example of these third-party breaches that are going to turn into class action lawsuits, right? Because now you have a payroll provider, and we know what happens when payroll providers can't operate or a function of their business can't operate. And now you have a third-party payroll provider. They had exposed data from Broadcom employees. So it's a reminder that your supply chain is only as strong as your weakest link. So you have ADP, who houses information for Broadcom and their employees. Broadcom outsources their payroll services to ADP. And as a result, they're going to have all those things that we talk about. Social security numbers, probably copies of driver's licenses or some form of ID, because you're required to turn these things in, and your employer is required to keep a record of them before you can even start being an employee there, right? So that stuff goes into your record, into a file, probably sent over to this company, and here you go. You think you're doing the right thing by outsourcing it all, and outsourcing the security piece of this to ADP, who is probably selling you that as part of their service. Like, we handle everything, including the security. And now you're going to have to deal with lawsuits as a result of that decision to hire ADP.
Yep. Yeah, because BSH is going to be not the one that everybody's talking about, right? Everybody's like, a perfect example is with the Starbucks that we saw a few months ago. Everybody's talking about Starbucks, but it was their third party. So this says that, no matter who you're outsourcing to. I remember I was helping a client, and they were using Salesforce, a reputable company, but they were actually using a field that wasn't hash, which means that it wasn't protected as far as what you're putting in that field, and they were putting sensitive information in there. So it just goes back to always asking the right questions to these vendors and making sure that you're implementing whatever you're giving them, that you have that type of plan.
And then, that's one side of the story here that we wanted to tell. And the other side is just in line with what we just talked about, guys. And that's this theft occurred in September of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
The data was leaked online in December, but Broadcom wasn't informed until May of 2025. So they were just informed this month that employee information has been leaked out on the dark web or wherever for a year and a half.
Yep.
18 months. So again, we have this issue with organizations basically deciding like we're not. They either don't know, and that's a reason, I guess, or they're making the decision, the business decision, that we don't want to deal with this PR nightmare right now, so we're not going to tell anybody until we have to tell somebody.
Wow.
Which is really like, it's the most least thing you can do in terms of having integrity as a business. I mean, That's just a scumbag move right there. Because you don't allow people a heads up. So when you're like my neighbor who's dealing with identity theft the last week and a half, they got everything, bank accounts, cell phones. They took control of this dude's life.
Yeah.
And it's serious stuff. Like, you don't know how bad it can get until you know somebody who goes through it, and then they tell you. You can't. This guy couldn't use his cell phone once these guys took over.
Wow.
Stole money from him and commandeered his cell phone. So just think about if these criminals are able to get enough information where they can commandeer your cell phone and what that could mean for your life. Because the police can't help you.
Right.
They can advise you on, you go to your provider and tell them what's going on and get your phone number switched, and they can advise you on what to do, but they're not going to jump in a helicopter and swoop down and get these guys because they're not in this country.
Right.
And it's not even like, unfortunately, they just have to write a report, and that's about as far as it can go for them. Right. And if by chance somebody happens to be within this country operating these things, they probably will find them and catch them and bring them to justice. But outside of that, these guys aren't in this country. I mean, if they are, they're not doing the heavy lifting. They might be an asset that's like doing recon or something like that on people to target. And that's the world we live in, right?
Big cover up. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah, so what does a company need to do to prevent this kind of stuff from happening? Because the breach wasn't at Broadcom, but it affected all of Broadcom's employees. So what can a company do to?
It's really hard in that scenario because you got to figure Broadcom's going to have the coveted SOC 2, certification that everybody seems to kind of be like, oh, if you have that, then you're good with us. And it really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. It doesn't mean you're secure. It means you have a bunch of policies in place, and maybe you've gone far enough to have a SOC 2 Type 2, and they've audited your procedures against what you actually do. And even those audits are kind of a joke, in my opinion, because I've seen them done. And when you have accountants trying to figure out if you're doing IT the right way, it kind of doesn't work out. IT people are smart enough to know that this person really doesn't know what they're doing, so they can kind of bamboozle them in a way, or so to speak. Seen it happen plenty of times. So I don't put too much stock into like SOC 2 Type 2, but that's kind of like the carte blanche right now, along with ISO if you're dealing with international companies. And it's really tough because these organizations are going to have these certifications. They're going to seem like they do it. The moral of the story is, it really doesn't matter. You could put all the defenses that Randy, Andre, and I recommend that you put in your business. We still can't protect you from these types of things from happening 100%, right? If you were doing the IT for Broadcom, you're not going to sit there and tell Broadcom, like, we're going to prevent all hacks. You're never going to get hacked, right? You're not going to tell them that, correct?
Right. But okay, so Broadcom's revenue is $51.6 billion globally.
That's not my point. That's not my point.
Oh, no, hold on. But to answer Randy's question, ADP's revenue is $19.2 billion. So Broadcom is much bigger, right? So now, could Broadcom say, you want our contract? you have to do this, like you have to disclose X. Like they have the firepower to do that.
But that's my point. What are they going to require them to do? They're probably doing it.
Right.
Well,
they're probably going to say, here's our third-party risk thing. And they're going to come back and say, well, we have a SOC 2 Type 2. Here you go. Here's our audit report. And they're going to go, thanks. You guys are doing a great job. That's how it goes, Andre.
They can't say, well, if you have a breach, you have to tell us. NDA.
100% that's in there. And there'll be lawsuits over that.
But okay.
That's not, that wasn't the question. The question is what can a company do? And I guess the answer for a small business is, and we're not talking about large companies like this who have the war chest to take care of these types of things. When you're talking in the small business world, you're probably not going to be dealing with a company that has a SOC 2 Type 2, unless you're dealing with a big company like an AWS. So, yeah, I mean, outside of that, you need to develop your own third-party risk assessment. As simple as creating a Google sheet that you send the link to every client you deal with, or creating a Google form. That's the way I would do it. I create a Google form that feeds into a Google sheet. Send every partner you deal with a Google form that asks them questions about what they're doing around cybersecurity, right? Do you require strong passwords? Do you use MFA? Do you have a security training program?
Wow.
All the things that you're required to do in your business, just turn around, make that a questionnaire, ask them if they're doing it in their business, and then you start to get an idea of what their risk profile is and whether or not you want to continue doing business with somebody who may or may not take cybersecurity seriously.
But who are you going to ask? Because ADP had a third party handling some of their stuff, and ultimately that was the people.
I just said I'm talking about small business to small business.
Okay. So use a small provider.
So like if you're going to hire an accountant, a CPA, that's
right. If they don't have a SOC 2 Type 2, if they're not a big company that's going to be able to, that's going to invest in something like that, then you have to develop a questionnaire and you have to send it to these entities. But in the big world, in the big company world, they're just tossing around SOC 2 certifications to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you want to work with Amazon, Amazon's going to do the same thing to you. Here's our website that tells you about our SOC 2.
Right.
You're not going to send them a questionnaire and have them fill it out.
Need it by the end of the week.
Yes. 100%. We get that all the time with clients. It's crazy. Hey, can you fill out this 7-mile questionnaire by Friday?
That I've been sitting on for
Wednesday. Yeah, we got Wednesday afternoon. So, anything else on this? 4 months. Companies take an average of 4 months to report a ransomware attack. We got deep in the conversation of third-party risks there.
Yep.
But really, all these articles that we talked about so far have led to this. I mean, the 4 we talked about have all supported what's being said here. Mm-hmm. It takes a while, right? And like a lot of the ones we're seeing, it's 4-6 weeks, but you got to look at that the bell curve, right? There's going to be companies that do it in 2, 4, 6 weeks. There's companies that do it in 2 months, and there's going to be companies that do it in 18 months, like we saw in the last article. And that's how this stuff gets averaged out into 4 months. So, I guess like the questions we're asking, but we're not really asking it. What I hear you guys saying is like, why should we change this? Why should we change it? And how do we change it?
Well, again, the reason why we should change it is because if my data got breached, I would love the courtesy to at least know to be on the lookout for things, right?
The sooner the better. Yeah.
Right.
Because you're more likely to fall victim to a scam like your neighbor's involved in that you mentioned earlier. If you don't know your data's all out there and it's all been breached, and you get a bill or a link or something like that for something recent, something you're aware of, you're less likely to be suspicious.
So this is more of a consumer protection issue for you guys, more so than a cyber defender issue, meaning like, there's been a pretty, I think most cyber defenders will agree that getting information out there quickly to the community about ransomware attacks and what ransomware groups are doing is beneficial in defense. Do you believe that as well? Like that's another reason we should be reporting this stuff sooner, or is it more just consumer protection at this point?
Well, I mean, the way I took your first question was with consumer. Yeah, definitely you want to get it out there, but at the same time, you got to make sure that you've run whatever you're going to say through your lawyers, because we know the attack, the breach, the ransomware event is a thing, and how you report it can open you up to more lawsuits, less lawsuits, more liability, less liability. So yes, report, yes, run it through your lawyer. So make sure that they're thumbs up on what you're saying.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a timeline, right? It's like if you're too quick, you run the risk of lawsuits. There's like that sweet spot that you got to figure out where that is, where you're not going to say anything too soon where you're going to get yourself in trouble, but you're also not delaying it to where you're going to get yourself in trouble, right? Because if you delay it, you could be seeing lawsuits because of that. Right. So it's a very interesting dynamic that, these breach coaches that these, organizations send in, these lawyers have to grapple with and have to figure out. And I don't think they figured it out, because right now I see the timing all over the place right now. I think there's different camps, I guess, based on what law firm you hire at this point. They're not all singing the same tune, so to speak. So we'll keep everyone updated. This stuff doesn't move as quick as AI, but it does change pretty quickly. And, that's why we're doing this stuff. So real quick, guys, I wanted to touch on this. I skipped over it because I wanted to kind of tie in the time frame of reporting with those other discussions. But we stumbled upon this article, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it does bring up another interesting angle of data breaches that people don't necessarily look at on the surface. But when you start to dig deep into the problems of organizations not protecting information, we've talked about it before, when we see courts and municipal governments or courts or police departments get hacked, and you see victims of crimes information exposed. Not only that, we've seen government or police informants be exposed, cases that were being investigated be exposed. And these hackers, man, they're as brazen to go out and tell criminal gangs that, hey, look, this police department's been watching you, and here's all the information they have on you, and they give it to them. I mean, we've seen crazy stuff like that going on out there. So then on top of it, we know about the issues that the Catholic Church has had over the years. And this appears to be a law firm that unfortunately had their data stolen. And now the victims of this unfortunate event that occurred over many years, some of their information or some of those victims have been exposed as a result of this law firm who represented the perpetrators in this case, I guess you want to say. And as a result of that, they obviously, through discovery, got victim information, and this victim information has now been, exposed. So it's a big deal. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. If you guys want to kind of, chime in with your 2 cents, but I just wanted to highlight the severity of these types of things and what gets exposed in these data breaches, and why I get so frustrated on this show when I see organizations not doing what they need to do.
Right.
I see the data that gets exposed. People reading news articles, the average bloke who doesn't deal with this stuff every day. I have friends that, investigated things like, work for detectives. They were detectives, right? And they investigated some heinous crimes, right? And that's probably the worst of it in terms of things you might do in a job that you're exposed to. But in this world, you're exposed to some pretty crazy stuff too that you see as a result of data breaches and stuff like that. And unfortunately, we got to do a better job because this stuff wasn't meant to get out there. And this is why we need to do a better job. So
this,
I don't know if you guys want to share anything, Andre.
Yes.
I know this hits close to home to you with some of the things that you're involved in.
Yep.
I don't know if you have any thoughts or.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of lawyers actually. And one thing I always get from lawyers is, our stuff is public records, who cares about our data? But when you're dealing with HR complaints, medical history, legal claims, and then which is a good point, when there's settlements, right? And the settlements aren't public. It's settled. You don't want that information to get out there. So that's actually a point I'm going to start making with, my criminal defense attorneys and other attorneys that we deal with.
When you're talking with lawyers.
And maybe you're somebody who's been through something and you spent many years recovering and you feel like you've made strides. And maybe it's been 10 or 15 years since you've had to really deal with the issue. And then boom, this thing comes out like this.
Right.
And, it's now, could potentially be wreaking havoc on your psyche and your life again. And it's no fun. So,
hey, Brian,
I
want to say something.
Go ahead.
So this also reminds me of like a DNA provider that checks your DNA.
23andMe.
Yeah. And then the data gets exposed where you've got the most sensitive of personal data that then falls into the hands of someone else, then that gets exposed.
Yeah.
So anyway, bad stuff.
Tough. Yeah. So we got to do better because it's not great. So these are the reasons why cybersecurity is important. And yes, we all want to jump on the AI thing, but we can't do it. We can't go in that direction without keeping all of this stuff in our forefront of our minds that we have to protect data. Right.
Man, Brian, when you said AI, I started itching, man. Say it again.
So let's keep talking about cybersecurity. Nucor, big metal company, Randy says, had to stop production, guys, of I don't know where my show notes are on this one. There it is. Largest steel producers. Randy told me. I did not realize that. Nucor was forced to halt production after a cyber attack, highlighting how a digital assault can even bring the most physical of industries to a standstill. So what risks do manufacturers like Nucor face in terms of operational downtime? I mean, especially, Randy, you can speak to why this particular company is critical to the U.S.
Well, yeah, so back in the day, you had America dominated with steel, started losing steel over to other countries over the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Nucor came along kind of as a new, I don't know if they were a new startup or just rebranded or whatever, but like the article says, they have grown to the largest steel producer. So now we're not just talking about a doctor's office with breached information of patients, which is horrible in and of itself. You're talking about the largest steel producer in the United States now, who's having to stop production. And right now in the world, like there's active chess games going on, if you will, with minerals, steel production, chip production, like all this stuff. Right now, we're in like the heat of the battle with this stuff as far as trade goes. So this is like a national event. Like they had to stop production because of a cyber event. That's my take on it.
And when you stop production, you are losing money. So they know that there's a huge possibility for a payout.
Not only that, people are going to go elsewhere to find this steel. They're not going to just sit there and wait for Nucor to get back.
Exactly.
They're going to go elsewhere, which means, a problem that was already pretty bad is just going to get worse. right? And we need to look into this. We need to see who did it, and we need to understand who did it, because this could be, I don't know, Randy, would you consider an attack on this company an act of war if it was done by an adversary government?
I wouldn't probably use that terminology. I mean, is it an act of war? Yeah, probably. But is everybody doing it? Yeah, probably. So I don't know that I would consider like a capital A act of war, if you will.
If
like
China's government was found to be doing this, or Russia's government was found to be the ones behind this, you wouldn't consider that?
Not a capital A and a capital W act of war that we need to roll out the tanks and the ships and the bombs and all that.
We don't. Well, I guess, okay. Well, act of war, we don't do that anymore.
That's right.
Sorry.
But
let me redefine what that term means in 2025.
Exactly. So, but I mean, obviously it's an attack, but I read recently about talks going on with Russia, and they said that we were halting our cyber attacks on them during these talks. So we know it's all going on out there.
All right, guys. So back to the old conversation of, and I still think this is the same dynamic, right? It's the C-suite versus the IT department or the IT room, right? And for the first time in years, ransomware isn't the number one concern for IT admins. AI is. But the shift in focus is that creating blind spots in security. So that's kind of the question that this asks. But I'm going to kind of say again that I guess IT people or engineers are going to be engineers, right? And that's why they're in IT and they're not, necessarily running businesses, because the guys who are running businesses aren't looking at AI as a security threat like the IT people are, right? So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Because one or two things is going to happen, right? And I don't know which one's going to win. I don't know how it's going to, but there are going to be two camps. There's going to be the IT camp of people who are like, oh my God, we can't do this. Everything's got to make sense before we move forward. And I venture to say that might be the old school IT person, where the new school IT person, I mean like the teenagers and the 20-somethings now that are coming up, might have a different mindset around this stuff where it's like go, go, go. But right now, as an IT person, you have to be aware that you're going to be looked at by business leaders in the next 3 to 5 years as somebody who's with them or against them. And what I mean by that is you can be looked at as somebody who's going to help their business, or you're going to be looked at as somebody who's basically like the government to their business, where it's all this red tape and all this stuff that they got to do to get stuff done. And that's where I see kind of things playing out in this kind of world with IT administrators and business people over the next 3 to 5 years. And you got to pick a side. Thoughts?
I have a ton.
Go ahead.
So, well, I also have kind of a simplistic take on this, but I think helps understand why this matters. Because what is cybersecurity all about? Cybersecurity is about protecting data, protecting information. That's at the root. That's literally what we're doing: protecting data, protecting information. So with AI, just from a standpoint of how you use it, you use the wrong kind of AI, you are literally taking potentially all of your data and letting AI see it. Like, I've seen AIs that are rolling out. They're the hot new toy. You can sign them into your email and boom, they can see all of your email, or boom, they can see all of your OneDrive. If those AIs are not set up the proper way, you just exposed all of your data. And it didn't take some fancy ransomware to do it. You just did it willingly. You just walked up to it and said, hey, here's all the data. So my simplistic take is it's still about the data. It's still about the information. And we have to look at how it's being dealt with when we are giving it to the AI. So,
spoken like an engineer. Perfectly. Thank you. Because here's what I hear when you're talking, right? Here, like literally, I hear you say you can't do that. Right. And I'm sitting here going, I want to upload this customer file that I have exported from our customer database because I want to analyze something in AI. And I got Randy over my shoulder telling me, you can't do that. That's sensitive customer information. If you put that in ChatGTP, that's like exposing our customer information everywhere. And I'm kind of the person who's like, I don't really give a shit, Randy.
Well, then you got to use the right kind of AI for it, because there are.
I know, but I'm just saying to you that is, I think, the attitude of most of the world, that they do not give a shit, that they're going to upload that into ChatGTP if it's going to give them 3 months of work in 15 seconds.
Right. So obviously there's perfect AIs for that and not so perfect AIs for that. Also, they may not give a crap right now. But 6 months from now, when we have the first lawsuit because somebody uploaded a spreadsheet of, like we talked about, from a bankruptcy and said, help us analyze it. And then some bloke over in Pittsburgh, happened to type in to ChatGPT some kind of thing that then revealed that personal information inadvertently.
Why do you think that this AI is going to be any different than what we've seen over the past 20 years with traditional use of the internet, email, and our efforts around cybersecurity? What you just laid out is the same thing we've been telling businesses for the last 20 years. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that.
Now.
And here we are 20 years into it, right? Saying companies still aren't buying this stuff enough, aren't doing enough, aren't doing the right thing. Why do you think it's going to be any different with AI? When that first lawsuit comes, who cares? That was them. That was that stupid company and their stupid employees. They got exposed, not us. It'll never happen to us. And you can't tell me that's not an attitude, because that's an attitude with cybersecurity for 80% of the businesses out there.
Yep.
It's a very good point, because just like how if we tell a company, hey, don't have a personal, you should have a personal device policy. You shouldn't allow your employees to put, their data on their personal computers. It's kind of the same thing. Right now, it's just a free for all. Anybody can use anything. Employees are paying their own subscription because it's only $20 a month. IT has no idea what's going out. And yeah, it is a free for all right now.
So we'll see how it plays out. So I just think that's an interesting conversation to have. It's an interesting way to see how this is going to play out. I do hope that the AI companies, Randy, and knowing, I think you're right and I'm right. I don't think either of us are arguing any point. I'm just kind of giving you my side, and I agree with everything you said. And I think AI companies need to take some responsibility in how they're rolling out these tools, right? If you're going to roll out tools and ask businesses to use these things, and that to your targeting is your customer, you need to put encryption in. You need to put secure ways for them to pull in their data and not leave it up to them to figure out that their data is basically being exposed, as Randy's describing, which is 100% right.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I've been interviewing some people in this field with my little side project, and there you get the classic engineer. Oh, we're still looking at it, and I'm not letting people do it. And you get some of the people that are like, we're like, yeah, it's the wild, wild west out here. Everybody's trying it, but I'm trying to get them to do it safely. So they're letting people do it, but they're doing it safely. Other people are like trying to like, hold the brakes.
Yep.
The reality is everybody's using it. Okay. They get, 5 billion hits a month just on ChatGPT alone, 300 million users, something like that. Yep. So pretty much everybody's using it. What are you going to do about it from an IT standpoint?
We'll only find out. We will learn. But these are all things that, as IT people, if you're watching this and you're an IT person, we're giving you perspective on how you need to think about this, right? You need to find that balance between moving forward and kind of saying, whoa, like we gotta, think about security here, right? Because you might find yourself out of a job. Like I'm telling you right now, most of these business people don't want to hear about security. They want AI, right? So just be mindful of that. Don't be kind of like the negative Nancy around AI and trying to always put security around it. Let your companies kind of live and learn, and then you can come in with the security solution after they get burnt, right? But you could always tell them and just say, hey, we need to be concerned with security. This conversation won't go far, but don't push it, right? And don't be a guy like, oh, I'm not going to do this because it's not secure, right? Got to do it sometimes. So that's it. That's my advice. So hopefully it's good, and we'll see everyone in the next episode. Stay safe out there.
Bye, everybody.
Yep.